Hello, everyone. It's Jerry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. And today I am home in my home office. I've got my headphones on, brown hair, brown eyes. I've got wet paint t-shirt. It's Ezra's new brand that they're starting. So support Wet Paint, another local entrepreneur. And today on the show, we have our new friend, Solar Steve. How you doing, Steve?
Aloha. Hey, Jerry, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with where you're at, if you don't mind.
I'm on the East Coast in dirty Jersey, about 3 blocks from the ocean here in Bradley Beach, and love to get my vitamin C and sunshine. And back on the East Coast, but I'm sure to travel all over the world.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's kind of get into that then. Tell us about you. Tell us maybe where you were born and raised, went to school, cities you lived in or traveled to, anything.
Let's see. Well, I'm a Pisces. I like kittens and long walks on the beach. Was born in a van down by the river. Um, no, I guess a pretty simple story. I'm originally from Pennsylvania and grew up there. Proud blue collar kid. My dad does construction, so I grew up, know, with swinging hammers and masonry and stuff like that. And then I was lucky enough. I was kind of grew up playing lots of sports and loving nature and the ocean. Kind of a smart slash bad kid. So I got some scholarships to some interesting schools. Like I got to go to boarding school and stuff, which is a blue collar thing, or a blue blooded thing, which is not me. People that use seasons like verbs and horse people, stuff like that, summer in the
Yeah.
Hamptons and winter in Aspen. So it was really cool. I got to go to these, great boarding schools, sit around a round table and like Harry Potter type vibe.
Okay.
Um, but I was a rebel without a cause, and I got kicked out of boarding school because I didn't want to cut my hair and listen to authority. Really stupid in retrospect, but c'est la vie, I guess. So then I went to college, a complete opposite of that. I went to college in Vermont at a hippie school called Goddard with like no grades and tests, and you make your own majors, and people did interpretive dance, and some really cool artists went there. Kind of like psychedelic summer camp for hippie kids. Vermont's beautiful and amazing. And when I was there, I was lucky enough to do a semester over in Italy. So I got to study in Florence for a year, which is just one of the best times of my life, the home of the Renaissance and the architecture and everything there. La Dolce Vita, people take siestas and just the art and the culture. It's really the way I think people should live, that Mediterranean Caribbean vibe. Um, and what else? How did I get into what I'm doing now? I guess I came home from that and got out of school. I was doing construction work, and then I found an opportunity. I got into doing. I threw an event called EcoFest a few years, which was like a fundraiser trying to like raise the consciousness about green ideas in my little local suburban town. Like what could I do to raise the consciousness short of like dosing the water supply? Um, and so we had like farmers market, and this was before there was the electric cars and stuff from Tesla, but we had biodiesel and a solar powered stage, and basically trying to use, I'd worked at a health food store in high school for a while, and I'd been the guy on the soapbox, like yelling at my little brother Chris about, why do you eat McDonald's? You know what they do to the rainforest and what they're spraying. And he's like, dude, shut up. It tastes good. Like, shave your patchouli bullshit for somebody else. So I tried to flip the script and like, what can I do to present these ideas to people that's not like preaching and off-putting? So I thought like music and food are the two things that really, bring people together and create community and also raise consciousness, right? Because I'm convinced that we have the technology and the resources and the money to live abundantly. But it's really a question of like raising our consciousness from, monkey to man to starman, woman, human. So put on like, a benefit music concert with cool bands and organic farmers markets. And this was, I don't know, probably 15 years ago or more. So, not to sound like a skinny jean, non-gear using hipster on my bike, but I was into that kind of stuff before it sort of got mainstream and cool. And I'm really glad to see these things sort of mainstreaming and starting to take off, and you know, people
Yeah.
doing yoga and drinking green juice and renewables and cannabis and psychedelics. It's really cool to see. I never thought I would see it in a million years. That was kind of the goal of EcoFest, was to promote that kind of stuff. Um, and then what else? Let's see. So that's sort of how I got introduced into the world of renewables a little bit, with the solar powered stage, and we had like a car show, right? Because Americans and people just love cars. You're out near Detroit, right? The Motor City.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, and my dad has an old classic car, and we go to car shows. So I had someone bring like a Model T, and I had like, I think there were smart cars and hybrids. There wasn't Tesla yet. Um, and but some of the first automobiles were ran on biodiesel, and there was electric cars that Henry Ford's wife drove 100 years ago with a 100
Mhm.
200-mile range. So just basically trying to promote these things in a cool, fun atmosphere. Show people they can go to Farmer Bob and instead of Walmart, and promote local economics and stuff like that. And after that was over, I found it interesting, like a work study job in Hawaii, out in Maui, and there was a chance, like like willing workers on organic farms. So I had a little bit of
Mm.
money saved, not much, but I could get out there, and I had a place to stay, and I could work and do construction work, and that's really where I got out into renewables and solar, was out in Hawaii, because kind of like Hawaii, the West Coast, like New York and LA, is 5 or 6 years ahead of everyone else, culturally and technologically, kind of like going to Tokyo or Japan to see what kind of video games and cell phones they're on.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a postcard of the future, seeing what's coming down the road. Um, and I was out there doing construction, and we got together. We had a little food truck. It was more like a food hut. It was a little tow behind thing called the Aloha Juice Hut, and we'd chop coconuts and make smoothies, and have some healthy food and whatnot up by the beach and concerts. And somebody I saw on like Shark Tank had a pedal powered smoothie bike. So we had someone make one of those bikes where you ride the bike and it would spin the blender around. Had a couple little solar panels, and I think I made pretty good smoothies, but people were more interested in the pedal powered bike and plugging their phone into the solar panel, and than my smoothies. So that's when I got into the world of sunshine and renewable energy.
So I have about 10,000 questions for you now. That was very interesting. Thank you for telling me that. What major did you make up for yourself in your school?
At Goddard, let
Yeah.
me see. I didn't know at the time when I went there, but maybe I wouldn't have if I would have known. But the band Fish with the PH, they went there, and their senior thesis was this like 50-minute Gamehenge epic song, and a bunch like Umia Abdul Jamal and a bunch of like artists and stuff went there, and just wanted to getting a degree. Nothing is exciting about that. I think I was studying like ecology and economics, and my thesis was, I wish I was these people. They beat me to it, but it was about yerba mate. So I started a company where these guys are really great. It's like rainforest rocket fuel. I was doing a paper about destroying the rainforest, and I was like, we're chopping the rainforest down at a football field a day or whatever the rate is to make cheap beef, and in a couple years it turns into desert. So I was like, we should just like not destroy the rainforest, like just because, let alone that it makes oxygen. But even if people are like stupid and self-interested and like money rules everything, which sucks, but that's the way it is. So I was like, all right, well, what kind of business could I start to promote sustainable economics? So I found this yerba mate stuff, which is like a healthy alternative to coffee. So it has to be like from these big 50-year-old trees that are harvested sustainably. So the idea is like, the more yerba mate you drink, the more rainforest is preserved, the more fair trade, supporting the local people as opposed to like clear cutting it. And something like 80% of the world's food and medicine comes from the rainforest, like potatoes, peppers, chocolate, coffee. Like it's the world's Library of Congress or Library of Alexandria. And we're burning it up to make cheap fucking grade D beef for McDonald's. Like it's asinine, let alone the cultures that have lived there sustainably for thousands of years. So it's really how can we preserve the ancient the ancient cultures and kind of like what can we learn from ancient indigenous cultures that we can use with like the modern high tech world to sort of, because we're kind of at a crossing, a turning point, right? Like I think we're at like an evolution or extinction, right? Like either we destroy our planet fighting over fossilized sunshine, oil, and water, or we evolve into our true potential and live abundantly on this Garden of Eden planet. And what can we learn from studying like ancient indigenous cultures who live, for the most part, like we idealize and romanticize them. Nobody's perfect. I'm sure the Navajo did some fucked up shit too, but for the most part, their society was way more sustainable and equitable and in tune with nature and
Mhm.
even like medical stuff like aspirin is white willow bark and so that was kind of the idea. What can we learn from the past to bring it to the future to help sustain and preserve the rainforest and like ecosystems and cultures and
Yeah, I love that. It's you keep using the word abundance, and I'm really into this because everything we need is right here, and we keep fucking up the system and doing it wrong and trying to, capitalize, and it's killing us. It sounds like you and I have a lot in common. So tell us about the Sunshine Farm or farming or
yeah, that's a great abundance is a great word for it, and for the segue into like what solar and electric cars and hemp and cannabis and bioplastics and all of this stuff. And this is, I wish I came up with any of this. This is mostly me sort of geeking off and grokking from when you said abundance. There's a guy, Peter Diamandis. I don't know if you heard of him, but Peter Diamandis wrote some books called Abundance and Bold, and this is another one, Taming the Sun. So pretty much anything interesting I have. I mean, I like to think I'm a kind of creative, weird guy, but I just basically read a lot and I try to copy what other people are doing. So I kind of, anything I say, I'm pretty much borrowing from a book I read. So I wish I could come up with this abundance, but his whole thesis, if you haven't checked it out, Peter Diamandis and Stephen Kotler, I think the name is, basically is that if you look at the news or social media, it looks like the world's falling apart and people are selfish, horrible assholes, right? And there's some of that. But if you look at the data, we're living in the best time in human history. Not to say there's not some problems, especially like some of this reactionary fascism going on, which I think is a reaction to the rapidly changing technology and economics. Things are changing so quickly, mostly for the good. So his whole thing is, and maybe you could put some links up later, I'll send you, but you look at all the data, like the eradication of most infectious disease, access to clean drinking water. And we still, like, in Flint, Michigan, and the lead pipes, we still have a long way to go. But the idea is that we now have, if you look at the data, the world's improving at an exponential rate. And because of these exponential technologies, we have the chance, if we can raise our consciousness, to like really evolve and live abundantly. So stuff like solar panels and 3D printers and bioplastics and solar 3D printers, solar powered 3D printers, printing solar panels that little AI robots and nanobots can install. So basically his whole idea, his thesis, and why I'm involved in solar is we have the potential to tap into like free energy, essentially, right? Nothing's totally free, but the sun is essentially a nuclear reactor in the sky, 93, 94 million miles away. That it's where all energy and all life on Earth comes from, right? So, the sun shines down, it makes plants grow. We can eat for energy, ferment for fun. That's all that beer and wine is. I guess after 5 o'clock or I don't know, noon for pandemic rules. Even, the gas in our car, it's old plants and dinosaur bones. Right, so everything comes from the sun. The only cost to harness that is the solar panels and batteries and technology. And the cool thing about technology is, unlike every other commodity, it's always getting more expensive, especially finite stuff like oil and gas that's harder to reach. We got the easy stuff. Technology is always getting better and faster and cheaper at an exponential rate, which is hard to wrap our brains around because we think linear, like 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what we're used to. But the exponential, Moore's law and Swanson's law, is it doubles every year or so. right? So
Mhm.
it's 1, 2, 4, 8, 16. So with these exponentials, things get interesting really quick. So in the last 10 or 12 years that I've been doing the solar, the cost of the panels has literally plummeted 90%, which
Yeah.
is no one ever thought would happen, right? It's fucking amazing. Excuse my French. Um, like same thing with, remember flat screen TVs when they first came out? They were 10 grand. Now they're $200. These cell
Right.
phones we're talking on wirelessly through space at basically the speed of light through solar powered satellites halfway around the world. When they first came out, it was a big briefcase or, the Zach Morris brick phone. Now it fits in our pocket. This thing literally, and this is all stuff from that, abundance thesis of these guys. This thing is like a million times more powerful and a million times cheaper and it took up like literally an entire wing of NASA. Like this thing has more computer power than everything at NASA combined with the Apollo. When we went to when we left the flat Earth to go to the moon that's covered in cheese to go serve our lizard overlords to get our microchips. Um, I'm just joking. It's sadly not funny with all the stupid conspiracy nonsense. But the idea that this technology has advanced so quickly, right? And that's probably heard of Moore's law, right? That's
Yep.
Gordon Moore, the guy from Intel, that the computer chip gets half as big and twice as fast every year or so. So that's how this is possible. And then Swanson's law is like not Ron Swanson, the guy with the whiskey and the beard, but like every time you double in manufacturing, the cost of something goes down 20 or 30%.
Right.
So that's what's enabling all this, right? So the sun's free. It's been free since the beginning of time. The solar panels are not new, right? Like I always ask older people. I don't think we probably weren't around yet, but if they remember where they were when we landed on the moon. Do you remember watching that as a kid? Not quite around yet.
I was around. I do remember.
Oh, nice. Well, man, what are you
Yeah.
eating and drinking over there? You look young and spry.
I follow a similar path as you. As probably I'm vegetarian for the most part, and try to stay healthy and active constantly.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah.
So do you remember watching it like on TV as a little kid?
I do. Yeah.
Was it like black and white TV or was there color yet?
It was black and white.
Nice.
Is what we had.
Where was that? Where did you grow up?
Lansing, Michigan.
Oh, nice. Born and raised.
Yeah.
So the reason I bring that up is we literally couldn't have gone to the moon without solar panels, right? So scientists were aware of the photovoltaic, right? Like photosynthesis is light and making sugar and carbohydrates is what plants do, right? All technology is basically copying nature. Aristotle or Socrates, one of them, called it. I know it's Socrates, but Bill and Ted, be excellent. But I think they called it mimesis, which is like mimicking nature, right? So as the more advanced the technology gets, the more clean tech, and we can mimic nature better. In a way, like combustion, fire really is like we're trying to copy the sun in a little bit, or maybe copy digestion, but it's kind of nothing against oil and gas, right? Like it built the country in the 20th century, and the automobiles of Ford and GM, and it made all this cool stuff happen. Like as much as I idealize the Native Americans and organic and farmers and go to my farmer, like I don't know if I want to be a subsistence Amish farmer. And because I grew up outside of Philadelphia in the suburbs and lived out towards Lancaster, and there's Amish, which I think is super fascinating. Like they're people like any people, they break their rules like we all do, but it's fascinating to me that they mostly rejected the 20th century and they keep it kind of old school, which is really cool. But they also, a lot of them have solar panels on their barns and some of their buggies now because they need lights. And I asked them about it, and they're like, well, like we talked with the bishop and we decided that the solar is natural, like it's the sunlight that's what farmers are doing, really, right? So that's sort of tongue in cheek. I call myself the sunshine farmer and chief energy optimist, but it's really what we've been doing since the beginning of time. And even coal and gas, like that's it's fossilized ancient sunlight. So we can just sort of cut out the middleman and go directly to the source. I don't know where I'm sort of rambling. We're at the moon landing and Amish people. So I tend to rant a little bit. I just had some yerba mate, so sort of
Well,
buzz a little bit.
let me ask you a couple other things then. And one thing I want to tell you, you and I after the show, we got a lot to talk about. Because for anybody listening, you don't know what the Fledge is, and you don't know what I do. You just know about the show from one tweet, I think, and we talked a little bit, and you're on the show, and I love this because we're with you, man. We are right up your alley. So, I'm really enjoying this conversation. So thank you for rambling, if that's what you want to call it. I love these tangents.
Awesome. Yeah, I guess there's no coincidences, right? So I'm glad I saw
Yeah.
your tweet.
Yeah, we use biomimicry. We use abundance theory. We read similar books. We have similar philosophies. But I really love how you're tying it.
Whoa, the wind just blew.
Dang, sorry. I really love how you're tying it right through, back to, plants growing from millions of years ago. So, yeah, I got a lot I want to ask you. But what would you say your mission is? I mean, I think it's sort of clear, but how would you articulate like what you're trying to do, or what do you do every damn day to kind of push some needle forward?
I'd say we're on a mission from God to get the band back together. We got half a pack of smokes. It's dark out. We're wearing sunglasses. Half a tank of gas. Let's hit it. Guess that's a reference out your way. The Blues Brothers. Remember that?
Yep, I do remember that.
Yeah, my mission. I mean, personally, my mission is like I would much rather. I love music and art and traveling and So my personal mission, if I could wave a magic wand, would be be in a band, playing music and traveling the world, and have a little rundown villa in the Mediterranean somewhere, like growing olives and grapes and making wine and sort of like messing around on a boat and playing on my guitar. But I think I got a lot of work to do to get there, right? So maybe that's like the retirement vision or like the summer siesta. So I think my vision for like work and service and trying to be of help for the world in whatever little way I can, I guess would be really to like help to raise people's consciousness and help to sort of spread the sunshine and this idea of abundance. And it's amazing. I feel really lucky and blessed because I would probably be like on a soapbox, at a health food store in the park, like rambling and about this kind of stuff anyway. So the fact that these industries, because of technology getting so affordable and people's sort of consciousness, I hate to use buzzwords, but I guess cliches or whatever there for a reason, like the zeitgeist or whatever, like the cultural consciousness, these weird fringe ideas, and it's I think a part of the idea of the abundance and the technology. They're now sort of becoming mainstream, right? Like people are doing yoga and meditating and eating organic green juice, and there's like cannabis is like a lifestyle brand with an Apple store, and people are microdosing, and there's freaking Tesla. So the idea like you can have a solar power to power your house and your car, completely like free of most pollution. Nothing's perfect, right? But it's basically melted salt and melted sand. And I guess sort of rambling. I guess a mission statement should be one sentence, but
no.
I guess that's what I'm passionate about. I want to help. Like, have you ever heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs?
Yes, I have.
Right. So
we talked
like
about them. Yeah.
Oh, nice, perfect. Right. So for anyone that hasn't read, you got like this pyramid, right? And the bottom rung is like food, shelter, air, water, like the stuff you need for your animal body to survive, right? And then the next rungs are like education and community and art, and then the next one is like love and self-actualization, like the stuff that makes being human cool. And most of us, even people that are like financially or materially well off, are caught on the first rung of like chasing after food and shelter and maybe bigger shelter or fancier whatever. So if you don't have food in your belly, you can't evolve up the next rung to get the interesting stuff of like art and community and education and fulfillment and belonging. So I think that's the mission with the renewable energy and this abundance and these 3D printers and electric cars, is like so we can kind of evolve our consciousness from monkey to man and then Starman kind of idea of like our potential to live on the planet abundantly and equitably and fun too, like not some like
Yeah.
Soviet like super efficient like boring thing. Like that's one thing I really like about Tesla. You know, a lot of stuff here I'm borrowing from Elon and his mission, right? Is like it's not just like, you know, green and cool, like, you know, the Prius with the bumper sticker. It's like designed deliberately to be ugly so that no one buys them. It was a compliance car, you know what I mean? But to make like a beautiful sports car that's fast and fun and has weird little Easter egg video game stuff hidden and like stupid jokes. Um, and and the first ones were neat. You know, people are like, oh, it's funny. A lot of people on the left or the woke progressive eco people really hate on Uncle Elon, which shocks me. And I get it a little bit. I'm you know I'm like you know, no guru, no teacher, no method, an old Van Morrison album. So, you know, he says and does some goofy, weird stuff for sure. Especially with the pandemic, I disagree with him and thought he was being a prick. But in general, like this idea of like, you know, what he's doing with these technologies is use the technology and make it open source to basically save the planet. Well, forget save the planet, right? The planet will be fine. It's save the humans, right? The Earth will been through way crazier shit than us. It'll keep going. It's just whether we can breathe air, drink water, grow food, and like, you know, not unleash pandemics from destroying the rainforest and eating weird animals and melting permafrost and stuff. So how can we save the planet, evolve our consciousness so we can live abundantly and equitably? So, you know, step up Maslow's hierarchy of needs and let the robots and the computers and the AI mine or make things from carbohydrates and hemp-based economy, so we like stop destroying the planet and destroying ourselves so we can like do more fun stuff, right? Like go explore the Earth, explore space. And I know people think
Yeah.
it's kind of mutually exclusive, like why go to the moon and Mars? It's, you know, we have starving people down here. Like I get it, but you know, the budget for that is like less than we spend on video games. So, and so many technologies like solar and hydroponics and the internet and satellites came from our space program. I don't want to go to Mars. I'm glad that like Elon and David Bowie and Ziggy Stardust are up there. But I think, you know, whether it's human or like natural asteroids, the sun, this idea of expanding human consciousness and going and exploring the stars, and then down here on Earth, like let's stop, you know, stop all the isms and all the hierarchies, right? All of the oppression and all these systems that, you know, were designed in the Middle Ages or the 19th century of, you know, when the economy was based on having to oppress people and you know, exploit nature and exploit people. If we can get that first realm of Maslow's hierarchy of needs covered with solar and wind and electric cars and, you know, a tower garden that needs 95% less water and LED lights, and we can have robots do stuff, and basically we have all of our material needs met, right? So we don't have to fight over territory or energy or water or resources. And then once we're also all educated, we can realize, like, when we have access to basically unlimited free information, that, hey, the only difference between you and I is an X and Y chromosome, the amount of melatonin, maybe the name we call God or goddess or whatever. And when people have access to this information, maybe they're not likely to strap bombs on themselves to control oil, or send their kids to fight and die for oil, or all this bullshit that we're seeing. This, I hope it's the last gasp of this sort of reactionary fascism, where, you know, it's really cool in Silicon Valley and the coast to talk about, you know, disruption and innovation, right? Like when I worked at Tesla, or, you know, Netflix and Uber and Airbnb and all these things, right? It's amazing, all these technologies, because technology always gets better, faster, cheaper. It inevitably eats the old dinosaur, the monopoly, right? So, you know, cell phones over landline, Netflix over cable and Blockbuster before it, Uber over weird smelly taxis, Amazon over everything retail, kind of unfortunately for the local. And there, you know, that's a different thing. You know, sometimes meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's sort of shifting the oppression or whatever. But stuff like that, Tesla and Bitcoin and all these disruptive things are fucking amazing and giving us this potential to live like gods and goddesses or kings and queens instead of like peasants and serfs. But if you're the one being disrupted, it really sucks, right? If you're a coal miner, if you work at Macy's, if you work in the factories, if you're a taxi driver, right? All these other things are very threatening. I think what we're seeing, I hope it's the last gasp of it, because there's so much trends if you look at all the data where things are improving radically and exponentially in a good way. Like, it's the most peaceful time on the planet. Outside of the last thing of the year lockdown, cities are like, there's like 70% less violence in inner cities than the 70s. There's so much good stuff happening. It's easy to get overwhelmed by like the 24/7 news cycle that plays on our emotions and now is actively manipulating us with algorithms from malign influences. It's one thing just to have Google listen to what we're talking about and have Jeff Bezos market us a widget. I'm okay with that. I think it's kind of cool. But when you have like foreign governments like Russian intel actively targeting to disrupt American democracy and pushing these far-right, reactionary, fascist, xenophobic, fucking disgusting un-American garbage, and same thing in Europe, right? They're taking those people that maybe you were a coal miner in Appalachia and your job's not there, and so your sense of whatever masculinity and identity, and I can empathize and understand it, but I'm fucking sick of it. Like, it's got to stop. Like, these walking around in AK-47 in fucking Walmart and talking against immigrants in a nation of immigrants. Every single person here is an immigrant. It's our best part. It's this, America's this imperfect idea, right? It was stolen from Native American land, built with slavery. Every immigrant group from my grandparents that are Irish and Italian, they were telling me it was our great grandparents, Irish dogs need not apply, greasy Dago wops, go home. Like, every single group, even the European, like Anglo or Caucasian looking people, they all got like, sorry, no room at the inn, go home, right? But then in a generation or two, people integrate. And my point is, it's the best part of this idea of America, right? And it's imperfect, and we've screwed up a lot of things, and there's a lot of isms that we still got it, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But it's this incredibly optimistic idea that was borrowed far more from the Iroquois Confederacy than from the Greeks. But this idea of everyone being equal under the law and everyone having an equal opportunity and justice and liberty, these are radical concepts that didn't really exist in most of the world outside of indigenous tribes for thousands of years. So I'm going way off on tangents, but the idea is, if we can get these technologies, right? Einstein said, like, be careful, be careful of your tools and technology, lest you become the tools of your tools, right? So not to get too sucked into technology for its own sake and social media and apps and whatever, but to have these tools serve us and serve our humanity so we can have more equality, more justice, more equitable distribution of things, so we can have an abundance, so we can sort of evolve and have more equity and less isms and schisms and fighting over race and religion and politics and sexuality, and like it's such nonsense, right? I mean, in my opinion, this might be, I don't know if it's politically correct. I think there's only one race. I think there's the human race, and we have a beautiful diversity of cultures and races and religions and music and food and traditions, and that's what makes like this rich tapestry. Like, so if we can get our basic needs met, that's what I'm getting to sort of with this rant about solar and energy. If we can get that basic stuff, maybe we can stop fighting over all these other things and celebrate each other. And that's, to me, the ideal of what America represents. It was super optimistic to see Uncle Joe in the State of the Union, not to get into politics too much, but the other night that was super optimistic about like what our potential can be. And that's getting back to my essential thing, like my thesis in college, like in this sort of 21st century, what can we learn from our past, and how can we go forward into a more like evolved way, right? And and I guess just one more thing about like America and our cultural stuff, because we're seeing this crossroads, which is super frustrating, right? Compared to like where I don't know, when I remember it being, right? But I think a good story. I used to work in New York City a little bit after I got back from Hawaii, and I love New York City. And I'm more of a country person, an ocean type person. The city can stress me out, but the energy of all these people from like all over the world coming here, it's a sort of cosmopolitan global place and working, and these ideas that influence the whole world. It's like the modern Rome or like New Orleans, right? You know the story of how jazz started in America?
Yes.
So real quick, I go off on tangents, but real quick, I think this is a thing, something I love, a story I love, right? All throughout the South, like drums were illegal. So like in slavery days, it was illegal for people to play drums because they knew it was a powerful underground communication. Like we have cell towers now, there would be like places in Africa with big drums that could communicate over vast distances, right? Like the runners in Peru that would get messages and things like that. So the one place in America you could play drums was in Congo Square, which was also a place of like slave auction, which was horrible and atrocious. And, you know, we need to evolve, and thank God we stopped, but we still have so much more to go. But anyway, the French they were a little bit more laissez-faire, you know, let the bon temps rouler. So the French were more laid back than our like uptight sort of Protestant people, drinking wine, music, siestas, all that kind of stuff. So they let drums be played in Congo Square. So because of that, you had like African rhythm and the Caribbean and the Latin rhythms, and you had like the European, horns and pianos, and the Scottish, tales and stories, and it all like swirled up in this gumbo, right? And like that to me is like a metaphor for America. All the best stuff from all over that you could never have anywhere else. Like jazz wouldn't happen in Japan or Zimbabwe or like they all have beautiful, cool cultures, but it's kind of homogenous. So it's just like really cool to me. And that's what I think we should strive for, is like this melting pot where everyone's equal and valued and we can all enjoy each other and dance and boogie and celebrate, instead of like fighting over these asinine 19th century or like medieval dark ages things I can't believe we're still even discussing. But I don't know. There's a lot of good progress, and I try to focus on the good and try to stay, the glass is not half full or half empty. Like the cup runneth over,
Yeah. So, again, I love what you're saying, and we're going to go into the next segment now of the show, where I had a guest yesterday who was talking about crypto and NFTs and all of that with me. And we always pass a question to the next show from the previous show. And his question that he wanted me to ask you is, have you ever thought about, like you mentioned Bitcoin, there's a big expense to mining Bitcoin. It consumes a lot of energy. It's one of the big criticisms. What are your thoughts on that? And have you ever thought of like solar systems that would, solar powered systems that would solve that problem?
I think we definitely have to, and hopefully that can be the point of it. And all of this cool digital innovative disruption leading to more equality and less like the other pyramid of the people at the top controlling the resources. And I think deeper than, and I'm totally a novice, I got a little bit of Bitcoin, a little bit of Ethereum. I love the Doge coin. I don't know if I'm saying it right. Yeah. I only got on that after Elon and the other people Snoop Dogg were tweeting about it. But yeah, it totally needs to be renewable. But I think the deeper technology behind that is this blockchain. I think like the idea, and I'm a total novice, so whatever, it's probably a kindergarten understanding of it, but the transactional ledger with like supply chains and things being totally transparent so they can't be controlled or manipulated. And that's also, I think, if you can have solar powered blockchain and crypto, then it's like, it's kind of like electric cars, right? Like if you get an electric car, but you're plugging it into a grid that runs on coal, nothing against coal miners, but the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. And all those coal miners and gas miners, like all great hard work. An important thing for this transition that we're going through is to give people job training and all these new things. So solar, by the way, is like creating jobs at 20 times the national average. There's already 3 times more jobs in solar. So as part of this whole, this sort of green evolution, I think the world's had enough revolution. We need evolution. And so this whole concept, I think that fits in great because it'll be transparent, it'll be clean and green, make tons of jobs. I think eventually we can get to a point with like economics, right? Because people fight against capitalism and socialism and communism. And most people don't even know what those words mean, right? Like you got to read like what's his name with the beard, um, uh, drawing a blank, or Adam Smith and the Invisible Hand and these systems, right? I think that what we're missing is these are 19th century industrial systems, right? Like whether you had feudalism and then mercantilism, and then the idea of like whether Wall Street capitalists control the means of production, or whether
Yeah.
like Soviet or Maoist centralized government control, both are fucking erroneous and stupid. What we need is a 21st century like post-industrial, post-scarcity, not to use buzzwords, but like an economy of an abundance powered by light and carbohydrates and hemp and equity, and instead of this top-down pyramid where a few people control all the resources and then divide all the peasants over race, religion, politics, nationalism, bunch of stupid bullshit. We have this circle, this circular economy, the sharing economy, right? The Uber, the Netflix, the sort of peer-to-peer networks. And I think the Bitcoin, it has to be solar powered, right? Because otherwise it's like plugging your electric car into a dirty generator. It's got to be solar powered and abundant so that can be sort of the mode of transfer. But there's something really cool that was Star Trek economics. I saw this cool book, and the idea of like what would that look like this post-capitalist communist is stupid. It worked functionally with indigenous people, right? Which we think were like the iPhone 11 or 12, but everyone else before us was primitive savages. Homo sapiens sapien has been around about 150, 200,000 years. So my point is, like, for 98% of our time as a species with this operating system, we've been hunter-gatherers. And just for our survival, and not in some hippie, whatever, crystal weather, voodoo bullshit, but just pure economics, our survival depended on cooperation with each other and with nature, right? Like if we don't all work together to go hunt that buffalo, we're all going to freeze and starve and die. And if we don't all share the meat or the roots and berries, so like that was how we were for 98% of our time. Industrialization only happened 1850s, right? It made this radical advance and all these cool things. Well, agriculture happened 12,000 years ago. That's the birth of civilization. A lot of really cool stuff, but along with that came this stratification, this hierarchy. So you had these huge population booms, domesticating and living with animals. So you had the good things that we all celebrate, right? Diversity of jobs and all this growth in technology. The downside is living with animals in a population boom led to all this disease and pandemics. It led to fighting over controlling territory. It led to, a motivation for institutionalized warfare and slavery. So all of these isms and schisms sort of came about. Industrial revolution, maybe 150 years ago, and that's the whole modern world. But all this great stuff, but we've gotten to the point of basically destroying the planet. Like we're having like ecocide, the breakdown of our fundamental operating system on the planet and ourselves. But I think the whole point of it is with these solar technologies and Bitcoins and all this great stuff, and to tie into like what my senior thesis in school, in the hippie school was, is if we can take that ancient indigenous knowledge, right? And then we take the modern 21st century clean tech, green tech, people peer-to-peer, we slice out like the Amish did, the worst aspects of the 20th century, right? Because if there's oil, right? If our whole economy runs on oil, well, whoever controls the oil controls the world. So that's all the problems with the Middle East and Russia and ExxonMobil and all that stuff. It's all who can control this finite resource that runs the planet, like the spice in Dune, right? If the beauty of the sun is no one can own or can control the sun, it's available to everyone equally, and it shines the most in some of the poorest countries. So I think the vision is kind of like the Ewoks, right? Like the Ewoks were fundamentally, I guess, hunter-gatherer type civilization. So we can take the best of that ancient stuff, living in nature, sustainably, equitably, having fun, partying around the campfire, but also have, modern medicine and vaccines and spaceships and the internet and satellites and 3D printers and lightsabers. So the best of each each thing. Um,
Yeah.
and I think Bitcoin and that kind of blockchain will probably be fundamental in that in the beginning. Eventually, I think it'd be cool to get to like a post-economics where like we have, if you have a solar-powered 3D printer that can make a house, that can grow food, that can print freaking organs and clothes, um, eventually, hopefully, we get to a point like it's like growing money. Like growing food is essentially growing money. We can get to the point where everyone's basic needs are met. And I still think like with the Star Trek economics, like I don't want some boring Soviet communism where everyone's the same. Like if you want to go invent something and do something and make some new cool thing, like get rich, like get filthy rich or whatever, but it's not on like the backs of exploiting your workers or exploiting and polluting nature. So that there's still lots of like creativity and fun and independence, but everyone's basic needs are met, and hopefully that can take away the motivation and the economics and the justification for most war, right?
Yeah.
That's sort of the vision anyway.
All right. So tomorrow on the show, I've got the comedian Shane Moss. A Good Trip, I think, is one of his shows. Science and stand up, things like that. What question would you like me to pass on to Shane?
A Good Trip. I guess I would say, what does he think about Terence McKenna's stone ape theory and psychedelics for the evolution of consciousness? And to get even farther out, if he thinks, the stoned ape theory, for those that aren't familiar, was Terence McKenna's like the Timothy Leary of mushrooms, and his whole idea is that, if you look at the fossil record, right, our brains evolved like super rapidly, and the more rational things like the discovery of fire, living by the coast and getting like omega-3s from fish or meat, and language. But his thing is that like proto-hominid apes discovered mushrooms growing in the cow dung, and they ate those, and that led to this rapid evolution of consciousness. And he even goes one step further, and he's like that the mushroom spores are the only thing that he's aware of that can exist in space, meaning like mushroom spores can exist on an asteroid and travel through deep space. So his whole idea is that this is like that, what was that movie with the blue people that were real tall, Pandora, Avatar.
Yeah.
Avatar, right? So his whole idea is that these mushrooms and these mycelium, where they like tap into the tree and they're all dancing with the tree, that it's kind of, and you look underneath these mushrooms, there's like these huge, vast networks of mycelium, which are basically, I think it's like nature's internet. And I think that these ethnogens are like, the goal perhaps is to evolve human consciousness, to get us from monkey to man to starman, woman, human, to like evolve our consciousness, or maybe make music sound good at a Grateful Dead concert while the walls melt. I don't know.
Yeah, he'll like that question. What my next question is off all these topics, but I think it's not. What is happiness to you, and are you happy?
Fuck yeah, for the most part. Happiness to me is like, I guess being content with where you are and what you're doing internally, so that the external doesn't really matter, and having your needs met so you can be free to enjoy like life on this planet, on this like rock spinning through space with mangoes and oceans. Like, to me, it's so amazing and fascinating. And so happiness to me is like freedom, having my needs met, having some good companionship, being in love, having some joy, having some adventure. It's kind of weird on this last year. So many people were so hung up about like, I can't go to Applebee's or get a tattoo or get my hair cut. And like, not to downplay how hard it was for all those workers or whatever. Luckily, I'm blessed enough I can work from home. So I help people go solar all over the country and the world, and we can do everything mostly virtually in the 21st century. It's like, I didn't mind it at all. And it's kind of like, to me, if I have like my mind and my memories and music and books, like I can travel in my mind. So it didn't hang me up at all. Like I kind of actually didn't enjoy it. I'm super glad that now I've got my vaccines, thanks to science and nature and supernatural science, that now we can go out and go explore the world again for real. So Yeah, I guess enjoying good food, music, the
Yeah,
Dolce Vita, right? In Italy, they call it La Dolce Vita. In not Peru, Costa Rica, they call it the Pura Vida. So the good life,
yeah,
friends, family, simple things. Like I used to think like these, I need to like have like be in a villa with a yacht and like none of that shit matters. I just want to be like a couple friends around a bonfire, some good food, some good maybe a guitar. Um,
yeah. I
health,
like that.
health is wealth.
That's right. Medicaid for all or Medicare for all.
I love it. I was
I,
so inspired by the talk Uncle Joe's talk last night, and this sort of positive direction with these kind of progressive ideas that are also focused on like blue collar kitchen table issues of like with all this disruptive stuff, all this renewables and the Green New Deal and all this great stuff. A core part of it, like I got into this because I'm like an old school, tree hugging hippie, kumbaya, power to the people, world peace, past the Dutchy part of the left-hand side, right? People only go solar because it makes economic sense, right? Because the cost of this equipment has plummeted literally 90% in the last 5 or 10 years. So now solar is just cheaper than coal and gas. And so as a
yeah,
homeowner or a business, it can save you tons of money. But I really loved how Uncle Joe Biden was framing it as jobs, 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 jobs. It takes, let's be the world leader in manufacturing electric cars and batteries and solar panels. And nostalgia is a very alluring drug. Populism and nostalgia are dangerous. That's what the people that fell for he who shall not be named, like fucking Mordor, the evil orange fascist who soon hopefully is going to be locked up in a gulag in Russia where he belongs, who did the most vile, evil insurrection on democracy I've ever fucking seen. And all of his cultists who don't believe in that the world's round and that science works and democracy should be ashamed of themselves. But the way we connect with those people, what they fell for, I understand what they fell for. Because I grew up blue collar, dude swinging a hammer in a truck and going hunting and fishing and all that kind of stuff. I know what those guys fell for, but it was a lie because nostalgia is always a lie. Nostalgia, like, oh, back in the 80s, it was so much simpler and better when I was a kid. Or, oh, back in the 50s, like Leave It to Beaver and Mayberry and Small Town, right? That's what the conservatives are nostalgic for. The liberal progressive is nostalgic for the 1850s, like pre-industrial, mason jars and lumberjack beards and carving wood, all good stuff. I'm into all of it. The religious fanatics, and nothing against religion, but the extremist fanatic people that use it for control, they're nostalgic for the 1550s, like pre Western, pre-modern, pre-science, equality type stuff. The reality is we can't go back. We're not going back. Kodak is not coming back. Blockbuster's not coming back. Coal is not coming back, nor should we want it to. The reality is we can only go forward. And when America does its best, like when we won the space race in the Cold War, was when we manufactured and innovated and invested in infrastructure, invested in our people. And like Joe was saying, like from the bottom and the middle out. So like let's build and make and do things and sell them around the world and get people good, decent, like middle class jobs. We're the richest country in the history of humanity. Education and I love capitalism. And from my hippie days in Vermont, I was way more tree hugger. Like we don't need money, we can live in a teepee. Sounds good, but it's kind of stupid and selfish in a way, right? Like the whole thing of getting into solar is I want to help other people and be of service. But like certain things like education, healthcare, shelter, like people should have their basics covered. No one likes taxes, right? But we all chip in our little bit of taxes. No one wants to attack rich people, but like super wealthy, that's awesome. Get wealthy. Don't be Elon or Bezos. Just pay your fair share, right? Just chip in
yeah,
and use that to invest in infrastructure so that there should be no child or elderly person that needs for medicine or food or shelter or education. And even from a totally selfish, greedy capitalist perspective, that investment will pay dividends like 10x, because now that's how we were winning in the 50s and 60s and 70s, right? Up until I think the oil embargo, when sort of globalization happened, and basically we shipped our factories overseas because it was cheaper, and now it's more robots and automation taking that middle America, Rust Belt job. It's not an immigrant that you're scared
yeah,
of because of xenophobia and demagoguery. So the idea of like, let's invest in 21st century infrastructure. Let's win the future, and let's show, like, let's be the ones that make this stuff, and let's make sure everyone has food and medicine and access to education. And if you want to go above and beyond that, like, go live abundantly, get wealthy, help the world, have fun doing it. Like, let's have our grandkids have air and water they can drink, and have this global, cool world community, and go take a trip to Mars and hang out with Ziggy Stardust. But let's keep the planet Earth nice and clean and green, and have good jobs for people and medicine for people, and teach the youth the truth.
Okay.
Healing of the nations.
We really have to start wrapping up now. So one last question.
More. It's slices. It's dices. It's chops.
What gives you hope?
What gives me hope is, I guess, children and the youth and all the good people. Despite all the nonsense and the bullshit, I'm still, like, fundamentally convinced that people are good at heart, right? From, like, all of my limited travels around the world and growing up and meeting people, like, even people, especially in these polarized times, right? Like, most all people are essentially good, right? And even the ones that aren't, or maybe just not having a good day, or they've got some shitty, education or media or bad pharmaceuticals or diet fed to them. Maybe they're watching Fox News and eating opiates, and you know what I mean? Doesn't excuse it, but like, but people that I've met are essentially good. Most people will give you the shirt off their back. And I think if we can have these exponential technologies converging, where things can essentially be democratized with a big D, so that we can have access to, like, essentially clean energy and information at the speed of light equitably for all people, like, it's just super, we're like living in the most exciting time in history, right? Like, I don't want to be the Renaissance was cool, or like, organic farmers market is freaking awesome. I don't want to be a subsistence farmer. Like, we're on the precipice of, like, going and exploring stars. And also, like, everyone I meet, right, there's all these divisions, but every single generation, like, I feel like at least everyone I know, like, there's institutional things, there's historical things, there's structural problems for sure. All kinds of isms and schisms we need to, like, get rid of and evolve. But most everyone I know, and even the younger generation's kids, like, racism doesn't exist. They don't care about, like, gender and sex. They don't care about religion. Like, every younger generation, they learn so much quicker. Like, they pick up the technology. They're so tuned in with, like, the environmental stuff. Like, the fact that these concepts are now mainstream, and the president of the United States and world leaders and, like, the Pope is talking about preserving the environment and taking care of poor people, and leaders around the world, and grassroots, like, average everyday people. You can go to the store and get organic food. People are talking about farmers markets and yoga and cannabis and microdosing and electric cars. Like, it's a beautiful, beautiful earth, and I just want to have fun, and I want that's what keeps me going and excited. It's like, to me, the future's so bright, you gotta wear shades. Like, the world's fucking amazing. Let's enjoy it. Let's preserve it, protect it. Let's keep on rocking in the free world, and take care of our people. Look out for those less fortunate, and lift people up. And let's have some fun in the 21st century. And that's sort of my motto. I don't know.
Well, thank you so very much for coming on the show. I think there is a ton of information in here that I really enjoyed, that a lot of our crowd is going to really dig. So thank you so very much. And stick with me for just a minute after we hang up here. I want to talk about something else too.
Awesome. Yeah.
So we will see everyone tomorrow, and we'll see you later. And every damn day at 2 p.m. Thank you so much, Solar State.